Hello YouTube, SentinalhMC here for episode 20 of my RotaryCraft tutorial series. In this episode we're going to talk about a couple of additional machines that you can use to in transmitting power throughout your machines, your RotaryCraft base, whatever. We're going to talk about the belt hub, which is another way other than shafts to transmit power. The CVT unit, which is an upgraded gearbox. We'll see how that works. And flywheels, which what they do is that they keep power going for a little while, even if power gets cut. So we'll talk about them in order, starting with the belt hub and the CVT unit. Now, both of these require belts in order to function. You can make these without having belts, but they don't do anything unless you have some. So crafting belts is very simple. It's just a piece of steel and 8 leather. Gives you 2 belts. So if you're going to want to make a lot of belts, then you're probably going to have some cows and that you can breed and well, you can shear them if you have Darkcraft. Otherwise, you just have to kill them to get belts. You get 2 belts per recipe. It's not so bad. So that's how you make belts. Now the belt hub is crafted like this. It's really quite cheap. 4 steel ingots, 2 base panels, and a hub. We haven't talked about the hub for a while. I showed you how to make it in the windmill, the wind turbine video. But we'll take a look just as a refresher. A hub is a shaft bearing, a shaft core, and a gear. So that makes 2 belt hubs, which is good because you need to use these in pairs. So what does the belt hub do? Well, basically what the belt hub does is it allows you to transmit power over distance in the same plane without using shafts. So if I go ahead and I place a belt against this industrial coil, and I place this one over here, let me get a screwdriver, and I hit this with a screwdriver while crouching. Now this is red, so it's in output mode. Now if I take a stack of belts in my hand, and I right click on this one and then right click on this one, ta-da! They're connected now. Oh, by the way, I should mention something. You may have noticed that my texture pack is different. I'm not using Sortex Fanware anymore because RotaryCraft, a lot of the RotaryCraft items don't have any image, like the icon is gone, and you also can't see these belts in that texture pack. So I'm using the 32 Faithful, the Faithful pack that's included with FTV, and it allows me to see these belts and my RotaryCraft stuff, which is good. So anyway, so now we have these belts here. Let me go ahead and grab a dynamometer, and we'll stick that right here. And now I'm going to give it some power. Now, a couple things about the belt hubs and belts in general. According to the handbook, if we take a look, it's under power transfer. Belt hub. The maximum amount of power you can feed through a belt hub without losses is 8192 Newton meters of torque at 8192 radians per second, which is quite a lot. So we'll see what that is. That's 67 megawatts. So that is, if I remember correctly, this is the output of a jet turbine, of a gas turbine, I believe. And if we come over here, we can see that we have 67 megawatts. So the power is being transmitted through the belt between the belt hubs. And the cool thing about this is that you can do it vertically, and the only requirements are that these belt hubs have a straight view between each other. Now then, if you want to get the belts back, you can always just break the belt hub. There might be another way to do it though. Anyway, what I want to see here, if I right click on this and then right click on this one, you see it doesn't work. Doesn't work. But if I right click on this and right click on this, it does work. You can't transfer it. They have to be in the same plane, so they have to be in the same row as each other. And whichever hub you break, it gives you the belts back. So that's the belt hub. It's pretty cool. So it'd be useful if you have a lot of leather and you don't, but you don't have a lot of steel. And so, you know, rather than use a bunch of shafts to go a long distance, you can use belts, because this is quite a lot of power and this is quite a lot of torque. So you'd have to use a high-end material to use shafts for this, but you can easily use belts to travel the distance. So that's quite useful. So let's turn that off. And now we're going to talk about the CVT unit. The CVT unit is crafted like so. It's quite complex. A screen, which we saw how to make before when we talked about dynamometers, a mount, circuit board, 4 shaft bearings, and 2 bedrock shaft units. So you can't get this CVT unit until you have access to bedrock. But once you do, you can start making use of it. So what is the CVT unit? Well, basically the CVT unit is an adjustable gearbox. It's got quite the GUI to it, and I'm going to explain how this works. It's not too complicated, so don't get overwhelmed by this crazy looking GUI. First things first, it does require lubricant, but it doesn't actually consume the lubricant. So once you put the lubricant in here, just one bucket, it's not going to go away. It's going to stay. It's going to use it. It's going to be fine. And you don't have to worry about turning this against a power input while it doesn't have lube. It won't break. Okay, which is another good thing. Okay, so now we've got this set up. Let me grab another dynamometer. I always get rid of the one that I'm going to need. Okay. So right now, our CVT unit is basically just acting as a pass-through, and we're getting the same power out on both sides. Now, in order to use the CVT unit, because that's seat belt ratio 1, and we can swap to speed and torque, you got to put belts in here. So if I put a belt in here, now with one belt, I can go to a 2-to-1 ratio. So now you can see that we are in speed mode, so we've got half the torque and double the speed. If I hit speed and make it say torque, now we got double the torque, half the speed. Alright? And there you go. If I put 2 more belts in here, I can go 3, I can go 4. But I can't go 6. The biggest ratio I can go with 3 belts is a 4-to-1. So now, we've got 4 times the torque and 1/4 the speed. And you can swap into speed mode, and it's the same thing, but it's back the other way around. And it keeps going like that. So if I do that, oh, I can still only do 4. Gotta fill the whole row. And now, I can do 5, I can do 6, I can do 7, I can do 8, but I can't do 9. 8 is the highest gear ratio. But you can see there are a bunch of odd numbered ratios in there as well, so you can use the CVT unit to get some odd numbered ratios if you want some odd numbered ratios. And if I go ahead and fill this line, I can go 16, but I can't go higher than 16. Now I can have any ratio between 1 and 16. If I go ahead and fill this up, both lines, now I can have any ratio between 1 and 32, but there's nothing higher than 32. So I can have a 1 to 32 ratio, which would normally require a 16 to 1 gearbox and a 2 to 1 gearbox. I'm doing it with 1 block. And the best thing about the CVT unit is that you can change the ratios on the fly. So at any point here, I can decide I don't really want to use that ratio anymore. I want to use a different ratio. I can just go in here, change it. There you go. Now, it does have some redstone control to it, however. And the cool thing about the redstone control is that you can set the on-off state of the redstone to 2 different ratios. So if I go ahead and put my lever here, you see that right now we're in 1 to 1. If I turn the lever on, now we're in 32 to 1 with a redstone signal, which can be quite useful if you're using some sort of a system that wants to automatically trigger this after a certain point. I can imagine a scenario where you have an extractor running and you need to switch between the gear ratios between the first and last stage and the second 2 stages, because you don't have enough power yet to run all of them. And what you can do is you could have like a timer that was, and depending on how long it takes your extractor to process however many numbers of units you want it to do, have it automatically swap the ratio so that it'll start running the other two settings. That's one use for it. So that's the CVT unit. It's a variable gearbox with doesn't require a constant supply of lubricant, and it has redstone control. Just remember that you do need quite a lot of belts if you want to get a really, really high ratio. Of course, if you don't care to have that big of a ratio, you know, a couple of belts, it's not a huge investment in resources, and it's pretty cool. The CVT unit is very nice. So that's that. Now let's talk about flywheels. So I talked a little bit about flywheels, but we never actually went into it because we had to craft an iron flywheel core to make the pile driver. Flywheels are crafted really simple. All it is a mount and one of the 4 flywheel cores above it, and that gets you the flywheel. In this case, here's the iron flywheel. So there's 4 different kinds. There's the wooden flywheel, which is a gear surrounded by oak planks. There's the stone flywheel, which is a gear surrounded by smooth stone. The iron flywheel, a gear surrounded by iron. And the gold flywheel, a gear surrounded by gold ingots. So 4 different kinds of flywheels. They each have their own min and maximum torque and speed that you can put into them. And if you try putting more than that, they explode. So be careful with them. For example, the wooden flywheel can take at maximum 2981 radians per second. So 2,981 radians per second. Any more than that, and it's going to blow up. It requires 4 newton meters of torque, but it can only take 16 newton meters of torque. Okay, so let's see what that's about. Let's type in 2981 radians per second. And we'll do it at 2 newton meters of torque, which is less than what it says it requires. Note that nothing is happening. That's because we're not giving the flywheel enough torque to overcome, you know, its weight, its inertia. It's not going to start turning until we give it 4 newton meters. Do I have this turned correctly? Why isn't it working? Well, let's give it more. 5 newton meters. Okay. So it didn't want to turn at 4. But now that we're up to 5 newton meters, the wooden flywheel is turning. And what's going to happen is that the flywheel is going to slowly spin up to speed, and it'll do it faster if we give it more torque. So let's give it... Oh, no. Not 169. We'll give it 16. Torque. So what's going to happen is that this flywheel is going to slowly spin up to the speed that we've got it set to going into it. And it starts slow at first, and it starts going a bit faster. But once it gets up to that speed, it's just going to keep spinning, and it's going to act just like a shaft once it gets that high. What it does though is it acts like a battery backup. Okay, it's the best way I can say it. It's like a battery backup. If this power source goes away, then this will keep turning for a while at the speed that it's currently at. So if I turn this off, you can see that even though we're not giving it any power, the flywheel is still spinning. It's still providing the amount of power that it had when the power was cut. And it's going to keep doing that for a while until it starts to run out of juice, and then it's going to slow down. So that's what flywheels do. This is the weakest flywheel, the wooden flywheel. It's not all that great. I think the difference is that the wooden flywheel, it doesn't turn as long. Once power is cut, it'll start running down sooner than the other ones. But anyway, so that's that one. Stone flywheel. They all work the same way, but they all have their different power requirements. They all have different things going on. So this one can take 3265 radians per second. 3265. At a maximum torque of 128. 128. Turn it on. And there we go. There's our stone flywheel spinning up to speed. And of course, and you can see it does take quite a while for these things to spin spin up. So we're giving it quite a lot of power, 417 kilowatts. And yeah, it's taken a while. It's taken quite a while, you know. But that's what you gotta. That's the price you pay, basically. You have to provide a lot of power, and you have to use a lot of that power spinning these things up. But then once they are spun up, it'll help ensure that if power somehow goes out, you won't immediately be cut off. So I mean, you could use flywheels on engines, fuel powered engines, like a gas engine, performance engine, you know, so that if they run out of gas, this will keep going for a while. That's the stone one. Go up to iron. Now, iron's maximum speed is 6584 radians per second. 6584. And it requires 128, and its maximum torque is 512. Yeah, it's not doing anything. Go to 129. So you got to be at least 1 Newton meter over what it says is the required torque for it to actually start turning. Anyway, maximum torque 512. 512. And the iron flywheel is going to spin up to speed. Now, interesting fact is that the iron flywheel has the highest speed. Unless this tooltip is incorrect. This has the highest maximum speed at 6584. The next flywheel, the golden flywheel, which is the heaviest, maximum speed is only 1410 radians per second, but maximum torque is 4096. And if we turn that on, it's going to very quickly spin up because of the high torque, I would assume. So the more torque you give these, the faster they spin up. And it's going to spin up to speed. It's actually going to get there pretty quickly. So let's just let it go. They do have a sound effect. They sound all rumbly. They're pretty cool. These things are dangerous, though. Make sure you don't give them more speed than they can handle. And I'll show you that at the end here. I might end up blowing this all up. I don't actually know how big the explosion is, so I guess we'll both find out. But that's flywheels. So they're like, you know, like a battery backup. So if you think that your power supply might get cut at some point, put a flywheel on it, and it'll keep going. So we are currently almost up to speed. It's up to speed, it's just the power is climbing up. And there we go, we're fully spun up. So now you can just put whatever you want onto this thing. And this flywheel is going to be here, turning. It's not going to eat up any more of your power. Now, this is an important distinction here. Notice how I just cut the speed down and the power immediately started going down. If I put the speed back up, 1410, power will go back up. And then if I completely cut the power, it'll stay at the amount of power. But if the input speed goes down, the flywheel adjusts. So it's not going to allow you to put in, it's not going to allow you to spin it up and then give it less power and keep this amount. Its function is when the power gets cut, it's going to keep spinning at this speed and giving this amount of power for a while. I don't actually know how long this flywheel will turn. I don't know if it says it in here. If you want info about these flywheels, they're under power transfer and flywheels. Yeah, it doesn't actually mention how long they spin. But like it says, it provides a steady amount of power if you've got a varying input. So if your power supply is constantly coming on and turning off and coming on and turning off, flywheel would be a good idea. This is going to keep spinning for quite a while, I would imagine, because gold is pretty heavy. It's got a lot of inertia. So that's basically flywheels. I mean, they're pretty simple. So we've talked about the belt hub, the CVT unit, and the flywheel. These are all tools that you can use to help make your power systems more robust, or less headachy, less annoying. So let's find out what happens when we give this too much speed. Bam! That was a big explosion. Yeah, that was bigger than I thought it would be. That is a big explosion from the golden flywheel. So yeah, be really careful because you don't want this to happen to you. I'm gonna have to fix this now, but that's fine. I'm blowing up my world and giving myself headaches so you don't. So yeah, be careful with flywheels. Don't let them explode because they will do damage. Yeah, the last thing you want is for one of your expensive generators to get blown up because or something to get blown up because you switched a gearbox into a different mode and forgot that would push the speed too high. So be very careful. If you make a mistake, it can cost you quite a bit. I mean, look at this. It actually destroyed blocks that were way over here. So that was quite a little blast. So anyway, that was episode 20, belt hubs, CVT unit, and flywheels. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do in the next video. I'll probably I'll leave it up to you guys again. What do you want to see? Or I'm probably going to go talk about some of the more utility machines. We'll talk about the woodcutter. We could talk about floodlights and a couple of other things like that. Or if you've got a suggestion of something that you really want to see, let me know. So I'm SentinalH, and I'm signing out.